welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is some Magic rules that you might be getting wrong. Continuing on with my series, just shoring up some rules clarifications here, and today I'm going to be talking about resolution. And this is actually a question I got a few videos back about specifically what does resolution or what does resolve actually mean. It is a really important interaction in the game, obviously. And if you go back to my original Magic rules video, I had talked about the card Cursed Mirror, and there was some misconceptions there because I had said, well, this is a great card because of course you can copy your opponent's Eternal Witness, for example, and get that enter the battlefield trigger off of your Cursed Mirror when it enters the battlefield. A lot of people weren't sure that was the case because they figured your Cursed Mirror's on the battlefield already when it's copying the Eternal Witness. How does it get that ETB? Well, of course, because Cursed Mirror says as Cursed Mirror enters the battlefield. Very specific wording there. The similar kind of wording is on any clone effect, which means it will be happening upon resolution. That's when that occurs. Another misconception that people had there was that, okay, but if you cast your Cursed Mirror or your clone effect, then your opponents will know what you're targeting when you put it on the stack, right? Well, no, because it isn't actually targeting anything. Any spell or ability that is targeting something is always going to have that word target on it. So no, if you have a Cursed Mirror or clone effect, it's on the stack. Your opponents don't know what you're going to be choosing. That can be a big advantage for you. They will only know what thing you've chosen to copy upon resolution. If a card says as this enters the battlefield, that means it's doing it upon the resolution of that spell. Basically in that place between the stack and the battlefield. And that can be really important, of course, because there is no opportunity in there for your opponents to respond or do anything about it, right? I talked about this similarly with Chord of Calling in Elesh Norn, right? Chord of Calling is going to let you go get a creature out of your library, but when it's on the stack, your opponents don't actually know what you're going to get. So as it's resolving, you will go search your library for a creature and put it into play, and if that creature is an Elesh Norn, once it hits the battlefield, all of your opponent's creatures get -2/-2. There is no opportunity for them to respond. So the timing of the resolution of things is really, really important because it will sometimes depend on whether or not your opponents have an opportunity to do anything in response. And the most important thing to note with all of this is that you can't do anything while something's resolving. There is no way to interact or intercede while something starts resolving, right? If you look at any of those spells that have a whole lot of wording and they say do this, then do that, then do this other thing, at no point is there an opportunity for people to do things while that spell is in the middle of resolving. I actually had this come up in a game recently with a patron where they thought, okay, well, that first sentence happens, then there's a period, and then it says, then do this other thing. So between those two sentences, there's an opportunity to do stuff. There actually isn't. You have to wait until the whole spell resolves, even if there's a whole bunch of things happening, before your opponents have an opportunity, or even for you to have an opportunity to do something. Once a spell starts resolving, you can't counterspell it or stifle it or stop the spell from finishing what it's doing. The only opportunity to do so is before the spell actually starts resolving, right? I'm going to cast a spell, it goes on the stack. That is the opportunity for my opponents or anyone else to interact with it. And if they have already passed on their opportunity to do so, the spell will start resolving and nothing else is going to happen until that spell is no longer on the stack. You also have to be careful with the wording of cards depending on how their ability actually resolves. So again, similar to the Chord of Calling situation, World Queller is a personal favorite of mine. 3 white avatar 4/4. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may choose a card type. If you do, each player sacrifices a permanent of that type. I love this card. I think it's great in a commander game. So at the beginning of my upkeep, this ability will go on the stack. Now, the important interaction here is that when this ability goes on the stack, my opponents don't know what I'm choosing. The choice is made upon resolution, right? So this ability goes on the stack and my opponents go, okay, well, what are you going to choose? Because if I choose creature, they might want to sacrifice their Sakura Tribe Elder in response, or maybe if I choose artifact, they want to sacrifice their Commander's Sphere in response. No, they cannot do so unless I want to be a really nice guy and tell them what I'm going to choose. I suppose I could do that, but I don't have to tell them what I'm choosing until this ability actually resolves. Upon resolution, I now choose artifact. Everyone has to sacrifice an artifact, and my opponent is going to have to sacrifice that Commander Sphere to my World Queller's ability without any ability to respond to what I'm doing here. That is a really important interaction in a commander game. In a lot of cards, this is the case. If it says choose, you're doing that almost assuredly during resolution. Once you choose the type of card that everyone is going to be sacrificing, it is too late for players to respond to it, including yourself. By invitation only is another card that will work similarly, right? 3 white, white sorcery. Choose a number between 0 and 13. Each player sacrifices that many creatures. I cast my by invitation only. My opponents don't know what number I'm picking. I am picking that number upon resolution. So this card goes on the stack. My opponents are sitting there again with maybe some creatures that they could be sacrificing or doing something with. They have no idea what I'm going to choose. They have to make any responses they have based on what they think I might choose. That's the brilliance of cards like this, is my opponent can maybe sacrifice a bunch of creatures thinking I'm going to pick a big number, and then after they've done so, now I can pick a smaller number. The choice made upon resolution can have a really, really huge outcome in the game. Another important thing to note here is if a whole bunch of abilities go on the stack at the same time, or a whole bunch of spells, say your opponent has a storm effect, right? That's going to copy that spell for all the spells cast before in the turn. All the copies are going to go on the stack at the same time, and they will all resolve in order, and you can do things in between, right? If they have 20 copies of their Grape Shot on the stack, the first one can resolve, and then you can respond after the next one resolves, and so on down the line. After every single copy resolves, you are able to do things or interact with what's going on. Another interesting interaction here is one I just came across in my Deck Doctor videos that I do on my Patreon with Argus Kos, Eternal Soldier, and Heartseeker. And I was looking at this deck that my patron had sent me, and I really didn't know what was going on here. I actually had to figure it out, and it is a super interesting one. So Heartseeker is a 4 mana equipment with equip 5, and says equip creature gets +2/+1 and has tap, unattach Heartseeker, destroy target creature. And of course, Argus Kos says whenever Argus Kos, Eternal Soldier, becomes the target of an ability that targets only it, you may pay 1 and a Boros mana. If you do, copy that ability for each other creature you control that ability could target. Each copy targets a different one. And I'm looking at this card and I'm thinking, okay, well, the only thing that targets on Heartseeker is the equip, but why would you want to do that? And then the destroy target creature thing, but why would you want to do that? You're just going to tap this and unattach it to destroy all your creatures? That doesn't make sense. Why would you want to copy that ability? But there is a really clever interaction here, and it all depends on the timing of the resolution of the ability, right? So what's going to happen here is I am going to copy the equip ability. I'm going to pay 5 to attach this to my Argus Kos. That is an ability that is targeting my commander, right? We always want to look for that target on any ability to know if it works with our Argus Kos. Attached to target creature you control. So this is an ability that is targeting our commander, and we're going to copy it, right? So we'll pay the 5 to equip, the 2 mana to copy the ability, and the attach ability will copy for every creature we have in play. Now, why would you want to do that? Basically, what will happen if you have, say, 5 creatures in play is that ability will get copied just like it would with Storm. All those abilities will go on the stack so that your Heartseeker now wants to attach to all those different creatures, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you look at the ability again, the ability wants us to unattach Heartseeker, right? So what will happen here is we will allow the first ability to resolve, right? We have a whole bunch of them on the stack. We allow the first one to resolve, and Heartseeker will attach to one of our creatures. Before the next one resolves, we are going to react, and we're going to do so by tapping that creature, unattaching Heartseeker from it, and destroying a creature of our opponents. And now, of course, our Heartseeker is once again unattached. It's just lying on the battlefield, and then we will go to the next ability that has been copied, which will then want us to attach Heartseeker to the next creature, and so on down the line. And every single time our Heartseeker is attached to another creature, we're going to pause, we're going to tap that creature, unattach Heartseeker, and destroy another creature, and then move on to the next copied ability and let that one resolve. So the resolution process is very important here with this interaction, because it allows you to copy all of those abilities and then resolve them one at a time, even though they all went onto the stack at the same time, right? Every time one of those abilities resolve, we will attach it to a new creature and then unattach it from that creature using this ability, and then move on to the next one and attach it to that creature as well. So what does a resolution actually mean? This is the question that I was originally asked. I mean, I don't don't know if I necessarily have a fantastic definition for it other than that thing just happens, right? You put something on the stack, whether it is a spell or ability, and it's just sitting there waiting for other players or yourself to react. And if no one chooses to do so, then that effect or that spell will just happen, right? If I'm casting a sorcery, that effect will happen. If I'm casting a creature, that creature will enter the battlefield, right? Because that's what happens when a creature spell resolves. Essentially, resolution means anything that is on the stack just happens. If it's a spell or ability, its effect will happen. And if it's a permanent, it will then enter the battlefield. I hope that's clear enough. Again, it's one of those questions that you just don't really think about when you've been playing Magic for a long time. What does resolve or resolution actually mean? There are some really important interactions here that I went over, so I hope that helps a little bit. Again, there's a ton of cards that are going to act differently upon resolution, but the wording is always going to be important here, right? If a card doesn't say target on it, that means when you cast it, nobody knows what effect you're going to be using it for. If a card says target, that means when you put it on the stack, you have to choose the target for that spell when you're casting it so everyone knows what you're going after. If you're choosing an amount of things or a number of things, that is likely going to happen upon resolution, so nobody knows what you're choosing. I can't go over every card here. Obviously, there is a lot that some of them is going to happen when you put it on the stack, and some of them is only going to happen upon resolution. It's important to know which is which because it can really change the outcome of how that card works. But that is it. That is all. Let me know in the comments below if you have any other rules interactions or topics you want me to cover, things you are not too sure about that I can cover in the next video. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.